Hello, I'm Yifan Lee. I'm the publisher of Orientations magazine. I would like to welcome everyone to this edition of the Orientations Art Circle Asia Society lecture series. The topic of tonight's talk is For the Love of Broken Porcelain, the Delhi Hoard. The Delhi Hoard was discovered in 1960 on the grounds of a 14th century palace by the Archaeological Survey of India. Although it is less famous, it is twice as large as either of the collections of Yuan Dynasty porcelain in the Topkapi Museum in Istanbul and the National Museum of Iran in Tehran. We have invited three speakers, Ellen Smart, Aprajita Sharma, and Stephen Gaskin, to find out how they first encountered this discovery. Unfortunately, Ellen is experiencing some technical difficulties and will not be able to join us. However, I will still introduce her background as Stephen will be able to tell her part of the story. Ellen Smart holds a MA from the University of California at Berkeley and a PhD from the University of London. Her publications and lectures focus on Mughal paintings, as well as Mughal textiles, gardens, women, and jewelry. As curator of South Asian art at the San Diego Museum of Art, she organized and cataloged the Edwin Binet III collection of South Asian works on paper. Aprajita Sharma holds a PhD from Assam University and is assistant archaeologist at the Archaeological Survey of India. She has been involved in a number of projects and exhibitions, including Gallery of Confiscated and Retrieved Antiquities at Purana Kila, Delhi, and Museum of Mahatma Gandhi at Aga Khan Palace in Pune. Dr. Sharma has also worked on explorations at Loktak Lake and Elephanta Island. Stephen Gaskin is president of the Asian Art Society of New England. He began studying Chinese painting while serving in the USA Navy. In 1995, Mr. Gaskin joined the Friends of Asiatic Art at Boston Museum of Fine Arts and was one of the founders of the Asian Art Society of New England in 2000, of which he has been president ever since. Their joint article was published in the September-October 2021 issue of Orientations. Each speaker will give a brief presentation, after which Steve will moderate the discussion. Thank you, and I hope you enjoy the talk tonight.
Thank you very much, Yifan. I'll share my screen now, if you don't mind. And screen and share. Okay, so now let me just get the right thing on the screen. How's that? Can you see it? Can people see it? Anyone? Aprajita, can you see it?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
It's there.
Okay, that's very reassuring. Okay, so welcome to our Zoom meeting, everyone. Thank you very much. And as Yifan kindly said, we're here to discuss the great collection of Yuan blue and white porcelain in New Delhi. Just to give you a little background, here's a couple of pictures of Delhi. It doesn't at all look like this. It's a city of about 30 million people, but here's the Qutub Minar and the Jami Masjid downtown. And just to give you a sort of sense of what we're talking about here, here's a Google Maps aerial image of Delhi, or New Delhi, which is the British part. You may have all shopped at Connaught Place, and down here is Humayun's tomb. Somewhere up here is the Purana Kila, I believe. And right here it says Firoz Shah Kotla, supposedly haunted ruins. I didn't add that part, but it says it. I'm not sure they're really haunted, but we think they had something much better. Here's a photo of Firoz Shah Kotla. And it was a large palace for the Sultan of Delhi way back when. It's in a ruined state right now. And that's because it was sacked by Timur in 1398, along with the rest of Delhi. The porcelain that we're interested in, we think was dug up somewhere near the kitchen over here, perhaps. I think Aprajita knows better than I, but they're somewhere. And it also has a famous pillar of Ashoka, the great Indian leader from way back when. that Feroz Shah mounted on this building. And here's sort of a conceptual drawing of what the palace used to look like. And there's that pillar. Here's sort of the main palace itself. And this is not exactly what it looked like, of course, but it gives you an idea that it was a large sort of fortress and palace. So it had lain in ruins since about 1398, but in 1961 or 2, the Archaeological Survey of India's Gardens branch dug up a cache of broken porcelain, blue and white porcelain. And in this little review, which is bought for a very small sum at the ASI bookshop, it's a great value, they showed pictures of these two pieces of porcelain. And they said they're Mughal porcelain, ornamental Mughal porcelain. And then basically it sat around for a while until the really next thing in my view that happened, which is that Ellen Smart found it and described it as Yuan blue and white. And poor Ellen, really, she woke up at about 2:30 in the morning to get ready for this meeting, but her computer will not support this version of Zoom. So she sends all of you her heartfelt regrets, and she's relying on me, the poor woman, to speak for her. So I will do my best. So here's her story. Ellen was studying late 16th century illustrated historical manuscripts made for the Mughal Emperor Akbar at the School of Oriental and African Studies, or SOAS, in London. Many Mughal paintings depict feasts and gardens where courtiers dine from blue and white porcelain, heaped with food before them. In order to learn about the vessels shown in the Mughal paintings, she took a class in the history of Chinese ceramics, taught by Margaret Medley, who wrote a famous book on Yuan blue and white, at the Percival David Foundation, which is part of SOAS, or was then. In 1973, she attended a lecture at SOAS by Dr. B.K. Thapar, I hope I didn't butcher that, Aprajita, and of the Archaeological Survey of India, or the ASI, about excavations at the Purana Kila in New Delhi. He showed a slide of two chipped blue and white plates, very likely these, but who knows, and described them as Mughal. Ellen knew what they were, though, having just taken Margaret Medley's course, and decided to see them in person during her upcoming research trip to India. It was not an easy quest, but eventually she got to see them in an ASI storeroom in a tomb in Delhi. And there, stacked high atop each other, were an astonishing number of pieces of Yuan celadon and blue and white plates and bowls, all covered in dust. Ellen thought, this cannot be. If there were this many Yuan pieces in one place, they would be well known like the collections of Yuan porcelain in Tehran and Istanbul. But there they were, and there I was, she said. And to me, that's like walking into Ali Baba's cave and going, holy moly, look at this. They had been found not at the Mughal Purana Kila, but near the Tughlaq fort of Feroz Shah Kotla. So she wrote an article about the porcelain, which was published in the 1975 to 6, I believe, Transactions of the Oriental Ceramic Society, and gave talks on it and was encouraged by John Carswell, and did a great job. She identified the porcelain and really made it known, and she made it possible for both Aprajita and I to know about the porcelain through that article, which we both read, which brings us to our second honored guest, Aprajita Sharma, who is an archaeologist with the Archaeological Survey of India and a great authority, believe me, on Chinese porcelain. She's better than I am. I'm astonished at her knowledge level, and she's done some great work. So we'd like to hear about it from her. Go ahead, please.
Thanks, Stephen. It's so kind of you. Thanks, Yvonne, for giving this opportunity to speak about this wonderful collection of Yuan blue and white porcelain. So just in brief, my journey of doing this research of Chinese porcelain began in 2008. And I had completed my master's degree in archaeology and joined ASI as a research assistant. And that was the year when I first saw two portraits of porcelain, which caught my attention. It was in underwater archaeology wing of ASI, which I joined. So in the library of underwater archaeology wing, I saw Dr. Alan Smart paper, Oriental Ceramic Society, and the title of the paper automatically caught my attention. And it was one of the largest collection of Yuan period porcelain discovered in Firozshah Kotla. And during that time, I was not even aware of Yuan period. But I knew this collection is important, and being in Delhi, I must have a look at it. So I talked about it with my boss, Dr. Alok Tripathi, who was the head of underwater archaeology wing. And he himself did not know where exactly this collection was stored. So the search for this collection began, and we found that it is now stored in Central Antiquity Collection of Purana Kila. So in the meantime, I made up my mind to do PhD on Chinese porcelain in India. And in 2009, I finally saw this collection for the first time, and I couldn't believe my eyes. There were so many pieces, large dishes, small dishes, deep bowls. I couldn't photograph them or document them, but I spent some time to analyze the motifs and shapes and sizes of ceramics, thanks to Dr. Smart paper, and I knew it requires more research. Can you change the slide, please, Stephen?
I can.
So finally, in 2010, when I started doing my research on Chinese porcelain in India, I got necessary permissions to study this collection of Firozshah Kotla. And this is how it looked like in 2010. And same year, ASI, next slide, please, Stephen. So this was the same year when ASI organized an exhibition with China. It was a reciprocal exhibition, Treasures of Ancient China. And I got an opportunity to be a part of this team. So here I am with a beautiful blue and white Guan jar, which was exhibited at Salarjung Museum in Hyderabad. So after that, I gave myself full time to do this research on Chinese porcelain findings in India, and I completed my PhD in 2013. And after which I joined ASI permanently. And I had in my mind to plan an exhibition on the hoard of Chinese porcelain discovered from Firozshah Kotla. Next, please. And in 2007, under the guidance of my seniors in ASI, a proposal was prepared, and we finally organized an exhibition on this beautiful hoard of Chinese porcelain from Firozshah Kotla. We had limited resources and funds, but we did organize it, and we did not know that it would be such a hit. Next, please. Here is one picture with some senior officials of ASI and a few glimpses of the exhibition. So people there, they approached us and asked so many questions, because most of them were curious and asked, it is so beautiful, why would everyone want to break it and dump? It's just so foolish. So yeah, but it is difficult to answer. Stephen can understand. We even published a catalog on the exhibits. So next slide, please. Then recently, as part of a workshop organized by the American Institute of Indian Studies and the Embassy of USA, so I created a virtual exhibition on a few selective pieces of this collection, which even currently available on their portal. So the thing is, in case of India, Chinese porcelain is generally not studied in detail. So considering medieval pottery ceramic, so not only the collection of Firozshah Kotla, but from other sites as well. So as per the documented record, there are more than 126 sites in India, so where different varieties of Chinese porcelain have been found. But I hope, the thing that studies of medieval period ceramics are less and Chinese porcelain studies are less. But I hope it will change with more publications on Chinese porcelain, and I hope I'll contribute more in this subject. So with that, thanks, Stephen.
Thank you very much, Aprajita. So I'm going to tell my story, which occurs slightly, a little shifted, a little later than Aprajita, but long ago in 2012, I think, I had read Ellen Smart's paper, and I was going on business to Delhi to drive all around Delhi all day in 116-degree weather and interview ophthalmologists for work. But as part of it, I wanted to see some of the sites because I had never been to Delhi before. And so I had a tour guide named Bindu Lal who had helped me out with Asian Art Society people before. And she said, okay, Steve, what do you want to see? And I said, there's one thing I want to see, the collection of Yuan blue and white porcelain at the Purana Kila in Delhi. And I could imagine her going, anything but that, you know. But she did manage to get me in at the very last day I was there to see it. And they said, no pictures, of course, but here's the part of the Purana Kila, which was an old, it means old fort, I think. Humayun used it as his sort of palace fort. And in the walls, there are offices, and the ASI stores a lot of stuff in there, and among which was this collection of porcelain. And here I am next to Sarjun Prasad, and I think Mr. Lal, I think, I'm sorry. And there was the porcelain out on this table, and it was being cataloged by John Carswell at the time. So it was sort of ordered and had little numbers glued to it and stuff. And they said, I could take that picture at least. And I said, that's great. And on the way out, I noticed these boxes of shards, which I think I now know were set up by Aprajita. But I said, wow, look at those. Look at that piece there with the wave on it. That is fabulous. So I collect shards from Indonesia of Yuan blue and white porcelain. And so it's kind of my specialty, as you'll read in the article. So I thought, I can do something here. And, you know, so I emailed them and said, look, I can take these shards and match them up to the original parent porcelains. And I sort of photoshopped this shard here and took it out and matched it to the plate in Ellen's article and said, look, try that out. That one fits there. And they did. And they said, how'd you do that? And I said, it's easy. So they let me come in for a day to match the parent porcelain to the shards. And Aprajita nicely left me some, perhaps unwittingly, since we didn't know each other then. But so here's this one that was in this plate and our illustration from Ellen's article. And it's an interesting piece. And here's this part from the box, and boom, it fits. And it looks a lot better. I thought, this is great. Meanwhile, it's 116 degrees, the fans are blowing, but I spent the day doing this. And here's just a few shots of the collection. Before, we had only seen photos like this black and white one. So it was nice to see it in color. And it was all out on the tables as usual. Here's some lotus pond dishes and plates and bowls. Here's a nice one with double phoenixes. Always a nice theme in Yuan blue and white porcelain. Here's a close-up of that one. And notice just how well it's painted. It's fabulous. And that's one of the great things about Yuan blue and white. They kind of invented this highly decorated blue and white, and they painted it better than anyone has ever since, in my opinion. So if you look at this phoenix's head, they were just really wonderful painters. And that's one of the things that makes Yuan blue and white such a treasure. It's very rare. There's only maybe 200 to 400 reasonably whole pieces in the world. So this collection of 67 pieces in Delhi is very important. And one thing I like about the Delhi collection is the number of dishes or plates with fish on them. And fish on plates in Yuan blue and white are always very interesting to me. They always look a little nonplussed, like they walked into a room and they can't remember why they're there, or they forgot their keys or something. It's very candid shots of the fish sort of living their daily lives with water weeds and water chestnuts around them. And they're very wonderfully painted with these sort of curved bodies and such. This is one of my favorite pieces. Secretly, I think I like it maybe better than the famous fish dish. It has this rather nonplussed looking fish with this wonderful border in the cavetto of chrysanthemum scroll. That's a great piece, I think. And here's another nice one with a carp looking a little apprehensive in his little watery scene. But the best one of all, people generally agree, and sort of the cover lot for the collection, is this fish charger with this wonderfully painted fish. And it's all done in cobalt blue, all these differing tones of blue. It's really magnificent. So lively the way it's painted. So, and fortunately, only a little bit broken. Now I'm going to show you a couple more pieces that I worked on that I didn't show in the article, just to give you a little bonus for attending this. Here's this piece here, and here it is in color, and we're putting some of the pieces on it. And it's really a very interesting porcelain with this sort of slightly curved sort of crisscross background here, but lovely with the phoenixes, the waves, all that. Here's another one that's, I think, my favorite of the whole collection, which is this one done in, it's reverse painted. In other words, they painted the blue and left the white blank, essentially. Here it is now, and this one's in the article. And I just want to call attention to the magnificent painting on this piece. I can't even conceptualize painting this with that design, let alone, well, naturally I can't do it, but it's just hard to imagine anyone doing it. It's really an amazing tour de force in the use of this cobalt. It has a chrysanthemum scroll around the cavetto, some really nice and bold waves around the edge, always a good sign on Yuan blue and white porcelain. And it's a very deep piece. You can see here's the profile compared to a regular charger in back. It reminds me of a piece in the Victoria and Albert Museum, which is of a similar profile and level of elaboration, although I think this one's better. Here's the outside with its lotus scroll. And this painting in the interior reminds me of this band on this piece in the Artabil Shrine collection. Those are the two that I know. And I think it's just someone was a really super artist who did these. Now, that's the end of my part of the talk. I'll stop sharing my screen for a moment, and I'll go back to it maybe at the end. But in the meantime, I thought it would be a good idea to ask, I was going to ask Ellen some questions. Unfortunately, again, she can't be with us, but Aprajita, I will ask a couple of questions. And one is, can you tell us, Aprajita, about your other research and papers on Chinese porcelain in India?
Yes, Steven. Yeah, I have written some papers on the decorative motifs of Chinese porcelain, not particularly on the collection of Firozshah Kotla's porcelain. I have compared some beautiful motifs found at the different sites in India, because there are the number of blue and white porcelain of different period is much more in India. I mean, Yuan period's porcelain is comparatively less. I mean, we have only this collection, this huge collection. And after that, the Ming and Qing porcelain, blue and white porcelain quantity is quite huge. And apart from that, I have written some papers on the literary aspects of Chinese porcelain. And some papers on site specific also, especially porcelain, which have been discovered from the Golconda Fort. And I don't know whether you know it or not, because we have found some pieces from the northeastern part of India also. And and some imitations like Vietnamese were also. Those are not found in actual context. It was found probably in a coffin. There were 3 bowls, and those were Vietnamese pottery. And a few potsherds from, one is from Arunachal Pradesh, then we have some from Manipur also. So that was quite interesting. And apart from that, for this exhibition on Firozshah Kotla that we did for the ASI, we published a catalog also. That is a sort of documentation which ASI has done. So yeah, and I'm in process of writing more papers. Yeah.
Well, that's good. I think it'd be very interesting to put you in touch with the Chinese in the Palace Museum or somewhere like that to collaborate. I think that could be very profitable. If I may, there is a little more yuan blue and white from India. Aprajita, you've read the papers by the Japanese professor, is it Karashima?
Karashima, yeah.
Yeah. Could you comment on those for a moment?
Yeah, I think it was part of a project, and he came to India. He explored particularly the southern part of India, and he explored a few sites in Tamil Nadu, and he collected some potsherds from there. And the earliest one is a pot, I think, which he documented in Chittoor. I'm not sure about whether it's porcelain or stoneware, because I couldn't find it when I visited Chittoor. And he explored some potsherds of Yuan period, Yuan blue and white, from Nagapatnam, Periapatnam,
Ceylon Kolyam or somewhere like that, up the coast
like
a little from Kochi. So they have been found along the coast.
Yes, the quantity is quite large.
Yeah. And there were a couple of yuan blue, and there was other yuan blue and white that was not looted or buried at Firozshah Kotla. If I can share my screen, I'll just comment on it for a moment, if you'll indulge me. Let me just show you one picture here. There's a gentleman named Nicholas Marshall Cummins, who was a railway engineer in India at the time of the First War of Independence, 1857. And he survived that and started collecting Indian antiquities, including porcelain. And he moved to Magog, Quebec. I live here, he lived there. So I went to see his house once because I thought he had 600 pieces of Chinese porcelain. There was a fire in 1955, so only about 200 were supposedly intact. And I thought, maybe there's some broken yuan blue and white somewhere on the property. So I tracked it down and I went to see them, and they showed me these, they showed me photos of his collection. And you see this little dish here, that is the Hobart dish at Harvard, which has this little inscription that's basically illegible. And this jar here is up on the shelf here, and it is now in the British Museum. And it's a close match to another jar in the British Museum, supposedly from Turkey, and to another jar from Thailand that's in an old article by Basil Gray. And I just wanted to show you one more thing. This is Muffy Cabot, who's a very elite Bostonian, and her father collected this Hobart dish. He drove it over the Canadian border under a coat in the back seat of his car to get it into the US. And he would take Muffy he collected a lot. He would take Muffy to, when he visited the King of Sweden, he put her out on the steps and she sat there while he visited with the King of Sweden. But she told me all about this porcelain, and this jar here that Hobart collected is in the Museum of Fine Arts. So I just wanted to say that there's other Yuan blue and white, these likely from Lucknow that existed. And there were pieces in the Mughal collections also, which is another topic of some mystery. Maybe you could comment on that, Aprajita. The Mughals were big porcelain collectors.
Yeah, but I think they used Ming pottery mostly because I don't know, because in India we don't have many pieces, but there are some inscriptions of Mughal emperors. A few pieces are there in British Museum also, I guess,
Yeah.
with Mughal inscriptions.
In the Asia Society in New York, John D. Rockefeller Jr., I think, donated a charger that he bought from Canada, or came from Canada. And it is a Yuan blue and white charger with sort of a galloping qilin on it with an inscription of Shah Jahan, for example.
Yeah. But the number is quite less, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. Out of the massive number of porcelains they must have owned, only a handful survive. It's a real mystery where the rest went. Now, are there any historical references or records of the trade of Yuan blue and white or Chinese porcelain in India, do you think, Aprajita?
Particularly Yuan period.
Well, that would be my favorite, but I'll take any.
I think there are numerous travelogues, which mentioned the trade of porcelain. I think Ibn Battuta also, if we see Yuan period, he mentioned that there were trade of porcelain between Guangzhou and Malabar coast. There is a mention, and after that, the expeditions of Zheng Yi. There is numerous evidence of gifting of porcelain to kings and royals when he used to come to India and other parts of the world. So travelogues are the main source of reference, literary reference.
How do you think the porcelain got to India? Do you think it came by land over the Silk Route or by sea on the maritime Silk Road?
I think both ways were used, and earlier Silk Route was followed, but after that the maritime route, probably during the, if we see the historical records, definitely there was maritime trade of other goods between China and other countries, and there were ships sailing from India, and there were Persian ships also which used to carry goods. But I think it proliferated during the mid-Ming period. I'm not sure about it, but Silk Route was also used because we have potsherds which were explored by Orelstein. So looking at the archaeological evidence, I think both were used.
So how does the selection in Delhi in terms of types and decorations compare to the collections in Istanbul and Tehran?
I have not compared them, to that extent. Maybe you can explain it about it a bit.
I'll tell you, there's some really fine pieces, of course, top quality pieces in both the Topkapi Palace and Ardabil Shrine collections. They both have about half as many pieces as the Delhi collection. The Delhi collection is, except for like one little bowl, all high quality pieces of Yuan blue and white. And some of them, like the ones I showed you, are really as good as any in the world, except maybe the double gourd vases in the Topkapi Palace, but there are really some extraordinary pieces. They're different in terms of style in some ways. There's more of the fish chargers. There's a lot of those with the cloud collars on them, a lot of reverse painted pieces. They do have inscriptions in Delhi, and maybe you could talk about that, Aprajita.
Yeah, basically there are three types of inscription on Pirosha Kotla porcelain. The first one is Matbahe Khas, which means the royal kitchen, and there are the inscriptions are drilled basically. Those are not painted, and there is this mark called Sad, and so these are all Nastaliq, Nask script. And similar inscriptions, I guess, on a few pieces were found in Erdebil shrine also. Yeah, because I read the records of Regina Kral and it mentioned it. Yeah, very few pieces are there.
And most of the inscriptions in Delhi say kitchen or something like that, right?
Yeah, the royal kitchen.
Yeah, unlike in the Erdebil shrine, the little sort of red engraved inscriptions which say so-and-so owned this or donated this. It's more utilitarian.
Yeah, so.
Now, a question has come in. Why were so many broken? Why were they buried in the garden? I'll give that to you.
Okay. So we are not sure about it, but I think it was intentionally broken. Probably we are not sure about who has done it. Probably it was done. It was done during the time of Temur, when they came and destroyed Pirosha Kotla, or probably before that also. We are thinking about it. Who has done this? Because we don't have any written records or something like that we can actually correlate. Yeah.
It's possible that Firozshah Kotla had them intentionally broken. Possible. There's some
possible. We are not sure. Yeah.
He became more austere over the years, so possible, but we don't know.
We don't know.
So it's a mystery. And they were intentionally broken. You can tell by the pattern of breakage. It's like someone took a stick and was beating on the edges of them. They have other repairs, like staples of past repairs before they were intentionally broken and buried. And one thing I should mention, which I didn't mention before, is that after I'd put all the shards with their parent porcelains, I noticed that they're mainly about 2/3 to 3/4 complete, some much less, some a little more complete. But basically, I think they didn't dig up all the shards. It was excavated by the gardens branch, not the pro team of archaeologists. And I think that if they looked harder out there on the grounds where it was dug up, they could find the rest of the pieces of the porcelain, which I think would be very important to do. But that's just me.
Yeah, I agree with you. Proper excavation is required. And then we can find more.
We will find out. I think if you're intentionally breaking and burying porcelain, you don't bother to put it in more than one place. You just throw it in the hole, basically. Yeah. Now, why weren't other types of Yuan dynasty porcelain imported? Why was there a preference for blue and white? And out of the 72 pieces, I think 67 are blue and white, but the others are celadon. Isn't that more or less, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Which is unusual because most exports were celadon, at least up to a certain point, it way outnumbered the blue and white. It was really the workhorse of Chinese export. So it is odd that there's so much blue and white. And do you have any idea why that would be?
No, I wish I could find some answer. I don't know.
Ibn Battuta allegedly, Ellen tells me, once wrote that the streets of Delhi were paved with blue and white. I wish if someone can find that quote and send it to me. I, in my ignorance, haven't been able to find it, but that would be an interesting quote. But, blue and white was a real hit. In America and Britain, we had in the 60s, British invasion, like with the Beatles and all this, and that music took over. It was a similar thing with blue and white. It just started to dominate because people loved it so much. There could have been an association with Persia, but I mean, because a lot of the rulers had, their ancestry had come through Central Asia. So it's possible. But I think that I just can't tell. There was an embassy, I think, to India in 1342. It could have come with them. I don't know. But it's just, people love blue and white. It dominated the market. We have another question. What's the plan for these pieces in terms of display and exhibition?
So we have already exhibited them once for 5 months in Red Fort, but a few selective pieces, we are going to display them in an upcoming museum in Delhi, because these are very fragile and we can't display the entire collection, which we believe. So we have selected 6 to 7 pieces which can actually be displayed looking at the condition of the showcases and the site, because the museums in India is quite different from museums all around the world. So we have to look at that perspective also. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Well, thank you. And but people can see the rest of the collection if they apply to, can't they?
Yeah.
And how do they do that?
Yeah, they can simply write to the Archaeological Survey of India, and they can come and see the collection. So yeah, it's not that difficult. Yeah, they can come and see.
That's good. Well, if there's no other questions, I was asked to talk for a moment about, oh wait, has there been much interest from museums in China? I can tell you that. I went and talked about the Delhi collection to Li Zhongmo and Chen Kelun in at the Shanghai Museum, for example. And Chen Kelun had come to Delhi to see it. They were both fascinated by it and really wanted to exhibit it because they think it's a very important collection. So there has been a good deal of interest from Chinese museums. You know that Shanghai had its big exhibition in 2012 of Yuan blue and white, and they had hoped to get some porcelain from Delhi, but like Topkapi, didn't really work out. But they are interested because Yuan blue and white is so important in Chinese porcelain. So naturally they're interested.
I know, but these pieces are quite fragile and it can't be transported. So that is why, maybe that's why ASI didn't allow it.
We will see. It's possible.
Yeah. That's possible, yeah.
Yes, at any rate, there is interest by the Chinese in the collection, I can tell you that. And if I may, if I'll share my screen again, I'll just tell you about interest by another museum that's related. Here we go. So I have donated a collection of 900 Yuan blue and white, or largely Yuan blue and white porcelain shards to the Palace Museum in Beijing, as it mentions in the article. And I just wanted to give you a bit of background on that before we wrap up. I went there to the Palace Museum to see a Junware exhibition on the behest of Bob Mowry at Harvard and Nancy Berliner in Boston. And I saw it, and I saw this little stairway going upstairs that wasn't blocked off. So I said, I wonder what's up there. I'll try it. So I went upstairs and there was a museum of shards. I went, wow, this is great. I wonder if what Yuan blue and white they've got here. Look at all those shards. This is fabulous. And much to my surprise, here are their Yuan blue and white shards, 4 of them. I went, 4 out of all that? Are you kidding me? Because at home, in my office, I had this. And I had been collecting these from Southeast Asia online without touching them. I just go, yeah, I think that's authentic. I'll buy it. And my boss hated the fact that I had this collection. He said, this is a conference table, Steve. It was not made for this purpose. And I said, you're right. I need a bigger table. But I collected them. And I donated a couple to the Museum of Fine Arts, which ended up in this 2012 Shanghai Symposium book. You see these two shards at the bottom left and the top right. Those are mine. And they ended up in this book. I thought, hey, pretty good. But eventually my office became filled with shards, which you can see why I was interested in the box that Aprajita put out in Delhi, including some very nice ones. This one and this one, which is a great stem cup with this phoenix on it. And here's a nice one. Look at this reserve painted with some molded work. I've never seen one like that before. So at any rate, I was wondering what to do with it. And one of my friends, who's Chinese, He Wuxi, had some connections at the Palace Museum. And he said, Steve, what if you donated your collection to the Palace Museum? And I said, it would be an honor. I thought, there's a place that's going to be around for a while. And they like shards. I know that. So I think that would be good. So he helped me. He and his mother helped me. And we donated them. And I packed up 900 of them individually wrapped, which I do not recommend doing. It's a long process, and cataloged them and stuff. And during the COVID crisis, they finally arrived. They sat in the airport for a long time. They finally arrived at the Palace Museum. And they started unwrapping them out in the outdoors because of COVID. And, you know, found the stem cup, found this piece, which I'm not even sure is Chinese, but maybe it is. And they are researching them, and I'm very pleased about it. And I still get offers today. Someone just sent me this morning a bunch of shards, a picture of them. But here's some other ones. You see this section of a wave, this nice sort of goose, and this dragon shard. So that's sort of what's been going on there, and I've enjoyed it. Did I keep any of them? Well, those last ones I showed you, I've got on my table elsewhere in the house. I think eventually, though, I'll give, if the Palace Museum will have them, I'll just give them all there eventually. But I'll keep them for a while because I enjoy having them now. Are they displayed in the Shard Gallery now? I don't know. I think they might be eventually. I will try to find out. I hope so. I think that would be fun. So at any rate, if no one has any more questions, maybe I'll turn it back over to Yifan. And I think she can just take over. Am I right? Well, I think she can, but somehow we're the only ones.
Hi,
wait,
hi.
there she is.
Hi, sorry, I had to organize myself again. Thank you, Stephen, and thank you, Aprajita, for this very interesting talk. And I hope to one day visit ASI and to see the shards in person, and also to visit Palace Museum again and see your shards in the gallery. But I want to thank both of you, and I hope to see you guys soon.
Okay, thank you very much again for the opportunity to write the article. It's been very enjoyable. We do appreciate it. And thanks to everyone who came to this talk today.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you
All
so
right.
much.
Have a good one. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.